everyone. This is State Representative Kate Lipper-Garabedian. Thank you for joining me for a Conversations with Kate. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Jeff Roy, State Representative for the 10th Norfolk District and House Chair of the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy, on which I am a member. Jeff, thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here, Kate. Love to engage in conversations with Kate anytime.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's been a pleasure to work with you. Listeners may know that you and I have filed a couple bills together that are among my top priorities, the Student and Educator Data Privacy Bill and the College and High School Bill. And then I've been really grateful for your leadership on the TUE committee. You've been very inclusive with all the members, inviting us into a lot of really important conversations about the work that's happening in climate and energy.
Well, it's great to have you on that team. And I'm sure that your listeners are aware of your great work, but I'm going to emphasize the great contributions that you have made all through the last 2 years on the TUE committee, particularly in getting two major bills out of that committee. We could not do it without the great resources that Kate brings to the table.
Well, that's very nice of you. Let's turn to you, though, because I've been just so impressed. You've had sort of the golden touch this year with some of the legislation that you filed, as well as just tremendous efforts from TUE. For those who don't know, your district, I believe, comprises Franklin, as well as parts of Medway. And you've been a state representative since 2012. Is that right?
That's correct. I'm in my 5th term, 10th year.
Okay, great. Can you tell us just a little bit, before we turn to all of the important work on climate and energy, a little bit about your background and how you came to be a state representative?
Sure. So before getting into the legislature, and I came at it a little later in life, I joined the legislature when I was 50, had a 28-year career as a trial lawyer in Massachusetts, mostly did some work outside of Massachusetts, focused on litigation, ranging from product liability, medical malpractice, construction accidents. You may recall the big dig was going on for quite a few years, and my office was located in downtown Boston, right in the middle of it.
Got it.
That gave me plenty of business there, but also served 10 years on the Franklin School Committee, 2 years on the Franklin Town Council, and then ran for state rep in 2012 and have enjoyed every single moment of it, and looking forward to returning for my 6th term in January.
That's great. Last session, you were the chair of the Joint Committee on Higher Education. And then this year this session rather, you've become the House Chair for the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy, which is a larger committee. And a lot of work happened in this committee this session.
Yes, indeed. We had two very major climate bills, beginning with the roadmap bill.
Yes.
It was 5 weeks into my tenure as the chair. We got that bill finalized and onto the governor's desk, and he signed it on March 26th of 2021. And that particular bill set all of our goals to achieve net zero by 2050, and that set interim goals and guidelines for what the administration would have to do to get us to eliminating all of the emissions from our vehicles, from our buildings, and move to renewable energies as much as possible. And that was done in March. And as soon as we were done with that bill, we moved right on to the next bill, which is an act driving clean energy and offshore wind. So we set these goals. How are we going to reach those goals? And that's what the clean energy and offshore wind bill was all about.
Right.
Getting us a robust source of energy. And for those who are not aware, 14 miles south of Martha's Vineyard has the most robust wind in the entire contiguous United States. And if we're able to harness that wind energy with leasing areas for turbines, there's enough energy there to power every home and every business in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. President Biden set a national goal of 30 gigawatts of wind energy by 2030. And Massachusetts with its lease areas, can provide over 1/3 of that national goal, because we have the capability of producing 11 gigawatts of energy. We broke ground on the first commercial scale wind farm in November of 2021. And that was at Covell's Beach down in Barnstable. And those turbines should be producing energy by the end of 2023, early 2024. And then we're going to continue building this industry over the next several decades as we attempt, or will, become the Saudi Arabia of wind.
And hopefully that's the only thing we'll be Saudi Arabia of, frankly.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We don't want anything else, but we know what oil did for that country, wind can do for our Commonwealth.
And I will say, being a member of the committee and also just being, somewhat aware of all the work that you've been doing in this space, you have just done a tremendous amount of on the ground research, collaboration with experts, environmentalists, workforce, industry folks. You took us on a tour of the wind turbines that are down off of Block Island. I know you've gone over to Europe to check out some of the scale that's happening there. So what was really, gratifying to see is that the offshore wind bill that you led on in the House is pretty much entirely incorporated into the law that the governor signed this August.
It certainly is. And one of the key things, if we are going to electrify our vehicles, electrify our buildings, and rely on electricity for energy, we need to have a robust source to produce that energy and lower our over-reliance on fossil fuels. I think maybe some of your listeners have heard and read about the price increases for energy that were announced by National Grid and Eversource. And it's important that folks understand that those spikes are because of an over-reliance on natural gas in Massachusetts. We do not make natural gas in Massachusetts. We import it either through pipelines coming from other states or on tanker ships that come into the port in Everett. And the war in Ukraine has really put pressure on natural gas, and it's becoming rare and difficult to get. And that's causing the prices to spike, and that's affecting our ability to import this natural gas. So I know in my remarks on the House floor back in March, the war had just begun between Russia and Ukraine. And I noted in my opening statement that that has a significant impact on Massachusetts, and that we have to gain energy independence. And that's what really looking to offshore wind gives us an opportunity to get energy independence. And I'm not saying that everything is going to be powered by offshore wind over the next few decades. It's one of the menu of clean energy options that we have. We have plenty of solar energy out there. We're going to expand those options. The hydro project coming down from Quebec was on hold for a while, but the Maine Supreme Court overturned the vote of the Maine voters, and that project is back on track to deliver massive amounts of hydro electricity from Canada down to Massachusetts. We also have some nuclear options that we're looking at. We're looking at some fusion options out there, and we have our own hydro facilities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And there are so many other sources of energy. Having this great menu of options is really going to help us as we transition away from fossil fuels.
That makes a lot of sense. And it also is underscored by all the work that you've done and invited committee members to do in terms of your monthly conversations. We've had lots of conversations about these various sources of cleaner energy. And obviously I mentioned the offshore wind visit, but I also was pleased to join you for one of the nuclear power plant tours. And you're constantly looking for opportunities to continue to educate and engage, which is, I'm very grateful for that as well. So we've got the sources of of energy that we're looking at. And then of course, the bill that the governor signed that we put to him at the very end of this session also focuses a lot on sort of the grid and getting that energy to the consumer. So there's a lot there as well. Do you want to unpack that at all?
Sure. So transmission and grid modernization are two of the hottest topics in the energy field. For example, our grid was designed for a power delivery system that moved in one direction. You had these massive power plants. They would generate energy, and it would be driven along transmission lines and to the plugs and switches in your homes. Today, energy is flowing in multiple directions, but the grid really can't handle that. So one of the provisions we put into the legislation was the formation of a grid modernization advisory council that's going to really move the process along. I mean, DPU has been engaged in a grid modernization program and docket for several years, but we felt that this advisory council could help boost those efforts and move it faster, because technology is changing so rapidly, we have to keep up with it. And the
Right.
transmission system is how do we get that energy from all these sources like the turbines out in the middle of the ocean and get it into our grid? And that's more of a regional conversation with our states in ISO New England and having conversations with them about working together to provide the best transmission system into our grid. Very complex process, but we have a transmission working group that's going to look at that particular issue, while the Grid Modernization Advisory Council will look at grid modernization pieces. So putting the pieces in place to answer these questions that have been on the table for so many years is key to our success.
Right. And I've also witnessed and experienced the ongoing sort of back and forth between, the executive branch agencies that we empower and authorize to handle a lot of the day-to-day work. And then our role as, the authorizer, the appropriator of the funding to do the work, the people who've been elected by our constituents to represent them, a level of oversight and engagement. So, by way of example, when you mentioned DPU, I think you mentioned that we're going to have an oversight committee meeting in the coming weeks. Is that right?
Yes, and remarkably, that oversight that we're going to have hearing with DPU is relative to DPU's role in overseeing the MBTA transit system. That might be foreign to people, saying, why is DPU, which is supposed to be handling all of our energy and climate issues, what are they doing in the railroad safety space? And I think that'll be part of the inquiry is this an appropriate role for DPU, or should we have them focusing on all of the climate and energy issues and putting that transit safety oversight in another department? Certainly, I've asked for testimony from the commissioner on that very question, and all of our committee members will be participating in this hearing, and hopefully we'll ask some insightful questions as well. But that's one of our functions as a committee, is to do oversight in these particular areas.
Sure. Another one coming up that listeners might be interested in is that the Department of Energy Resources, DOER, just released this past week a stretch energy code. And our committee, your committee, has the ability to hold a hearing on the proposed regulations. And I think that is the plan. Is that right?
That is the plan. And our committee, TUE, is one of the only committees that has this function reserved for itself. Typically, we pass a law, and the administration will develop regulations, and they'll get a public hearing, and they'll be issued.
Sure.
In the case of energy regulations, before they can be released for public comment, they have to come to the TUE committee for an oversight hearing, and then the TUE committee develops a report, and then the DOER has to address the issues raised in our report. And this hearing will be looking at the new stretch energy code, which was required in the roadmap bill that we passed in March of 2021. And they're required to have that new stretch energy code done by the end of this year. And some of the big questions that I know I'm interested in, I'm sure you're interested in, is we asked them to define what a net zero building is.
Right.
And to come up with a set of building performance standards. So people who are in the construction business know what is expected of them when they're putting these buildings together, and they're building and designing them for a net zero future. So I will be looking particularly at those provisions of the code. And this is an opt-in code. It's not required. Municipalities have the option of adopting this new stretch energy code. Eventually, it will become the code of the Commonwealth, but we take, I hate to say baby steps, but we have to make a transition from our current building process to a net zero process, and that's going to take time to get there. And the stretch energy code gives us a transitional language.
Yes, exactly. So you mentioned you raised up municipalities, and obviously they're a huge partner in this work. I'm really proud to serve in a district where we have significant climate and energy leadership, both within city and town hall and elected officials, and then just in very engaged civic groups that are looking for opportunities to support clean energy, to reduce waste, and so forth and so on. Do you want to sort of talk a little bit about some of the provisions in either bill that are sort of specific to municipalities, and then also maybe even to sort of individual consumers? We've got some incentives in there, obviously, like a continuation and expansion of incentives in, for example, transportation.
Well, building decarbonization will apply to municipalities in how they design and develop net zero buildings. So they'll be looking at that. Energy efficiency is certainly something that impacts municipalities. Charging infrastructure for the electric vehicles.
Right.
We're going to need and require robust infrastructure to charge all of these electric vehicles that we expect will be on the road. We have a small percentage of them now, but by 2035, when you'll no longer be able to buy an internal combustion engine, I expect that we're going to have a much larger percentage of electric vehicles. And this is not going to work if people can't get access to charging. I'm very impressed that Melrose has put charging stations on telephone poles to make it accessible for folks that don't have a garage where they can put a charging station, or may live in a condo or an apartment complex. That's an amazing use of telephone poles and the infrastructure, and very forward thinking by your community. So I commend you folks for that. But we're going to need all 351 communities across the Commonwealth to engage like this. And you did ask about some incentives. We are increasing the incentives on the purchase of electric vehicles, going from $2,500 to $3,500. And if you trade in an internal combustion engine, you'll get an additional $1,500. I'm sorry, an additional $1,000. And if you're a low income person, you're eligible for an additional $1,500. So that brings it up to $6,000 in incentives on the state level. And if you combine that with the $7,500 that's available to you on the federal level, if my math is correct, that should be $13,500 towards the purchase of an electric vehicle. That's an incredible down payment, and should enable more people to get into electric vehicles. I know there's been a complaint that they're more expensive than internal combustion engines. We're actually reaching the point where there is price parity between an internal combustion engine and an electric vehicle. And with these additional incentives, it really is the optimal time to move to electric. I've been in an electric vehicle for 10 years now. Of all my years in the legislature, I have driven electric, and it can be done. It's it's a great way to do it. And a little secret is I'm not paying $4 a gallon for gas for
Right.
that electric vehicle. So therein, and aside from all the incentives you can get,
Sure.
you're not buying gas.
Yes, right. Exactly. So with our time left, we've talked a lot about the two big bills the laws that have really placed Massachusetts once again as a national, if not international leader in terms of forward-thinking climate resiliency and mitigation efforts to, green our economy. There's a lot of workforce as well that we didn't even touch on in some of this, which is, as a former teacher, and you as a former school committee member, obviously, I think we're always mindful of what are the jobs we're preparing our students for. And there's going to be a lot of great paying jobs in clean energy, which is incredible.
Well, your listeners should know that the portion of our college and high school bill that deals with the industry recognized credentialing ended up in the clean energy and offshore wind bill. And we're starting with a pilot for the offshore wind industry to give incentives to school districts to offer industry recognized credentials. So some of the language from our bill ended up here. So we had success there.
That's right. And I had no doubt that we'll continue to really lead in this area next session. And if you're back, I certainly hope you'll strongly consider being chair of the TUE again.
Well, it's not my choice, but I would love to return to this position.
I hope you will. And, what do you think we'll be working on in the next session? That's, things that we obviously are still learning about, considering bills that were really excellent, but just based on bandwidth, maybe didn't get to the finish line. What are things we might want to lead on next year?
Plenty of work to be done. Retrofitting buildings is a huge topic. And coming up with ways to fund these retrofits, whether that be through a green bank or some other vehicle, we'll certainly be looking at that. We'll be looking at more building decarbonization efforts. Competitive supply issues was something that ended up on the cutting room floor during the conference committee. And I know that's a real top issue for the Attorney General. And since she's likely going to be the next governor, I'm sure she's going to want to put that back on our plate. But there's a
priority here from the district. I remember that one. Yeah.
So a host of
zero waste space sort of reductions of
waste reductions. We didn't get to recycling. Massachusetts has one of the lowest redemption rates in the country, and we have to address that and hope to get, I'm sure that somebody will file some legislation, but we will take a deeper dive on that, because that's key to our success in reducing emissions as well.
Right. And also one thing that has been underscored for me over the course of this session through our work, and then also just sort of reading up on it, is all of the connection to public health as well, right? So,
no question.
Right. Well, there's a lot to do. There's a lot that's been done. I'm glad to be working with you on these topics. Maybe as we segue off, anything that you did for fun over August or August recess? I mean, did you have any time off? Did you do anything?
Yeah, unfortunately, I did not have much time off. I moved right from the end of the session into campaign mode, but I did go on vacation to Washington, D.C. for 4 days. And while I was down there, I happened to get invited to go to the White House to participate in the ceremonial signing of the Inflation Reduction Act, where President Biden spoke, Vice President Harris, Speaker of the House Pelosi, Senate President Schumer, and James Taylor started off the program with a few songs. So it was a great event. It was right out there on the White House lawn, and I was happy to be a part of that. That was certainly a highlight of my summer, and still playing with the band. So
that's right.
That keeps me grounded. So still making music, and we'll continue doing that. And if anybody happens to be in the Franklin area this weekend, the band is playing at the Harvest Festival. So come on down and join us.
And I'll keep looking for more releases on Spotify.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for listening to this Conversations with Kate, with Jeff Roy, our House Chair of the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. And Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, and keep up the good work. And I hope you will return to telecommunications, utilities, and energy in the next section.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, everyone. Be well.